Welcome to Driven, the Unscripted Success podcast, with your hosts, Mike Manino and Nariman Hamden, bringing you insights and stories on achieving personal, professional, and financial success.
Hey, everybody. I'm Nariman Hamden. Welcome to Driven, Unscripted Success, where we have guests that come on and share their personal and financial success stories with you and some tips of how they got to where they are today. Today, we have zooming in all the way from Pennsylvania. We have Kevin Elworth, and Kevin has been in the coaching business. He specializes in pastoral and coaching leadership. Hey, Kevin, how are you?
I am fantastic. Thank you. Thank you so much for having me on today.
Great. Thank you for joining us. Appreciate it. How's the weather up there?
Today, it's beautiful. A little chilly, but not nearly as nice as it is in South Florida, but it is where we live, so I love it. I'll take it.
Good. Yeah, I'm originally from Michigan, so I completely understand the seasons.
Yeah.
So this is actually not too bad of a time for you.
It's wonderful.
Yeah, nice, crisp. Well, so why don't you, so I've got a couple questions here for you.
Yes, ma'am.
Give us an idea of what, a snapshot of what your business is and what you do.
Yes, ma'am. So I just love sitting across from someone like this over a Zoom call and helping them get clarity on where they're confused, to be able to take steps in the direction of what they feel they want as significance. Most people I find today, they have a dream, they have a desire that's kind of stirring inside of them. And they're not quite sure how to get started on it, or if they even have the permission to be able to move in that idea of potential. So what's stopping you, and who do you need permission from to be able to press into that direction? That's what I do. That's what I get to help people realize their dreams.
That's awesome. That's really, really nice. So, I know there's a lot of coaches out there that help people in the way that you help them. Like, what sets you apart? What do you do that's different than others, and what do you find challenging about helping others and getting them on the right direction?
Sure. What sets me apart is, so I was a pastor. I was a pastor for 14 years. And the reason I'm no longer a pastor, there's a lot of things that go into that story, but I ventured into this realm of business coaching because of the fact that now I'm going to venture in. This is going to be maybe some uncharted territory here, but as a speaking pastor, you get up every Sunday and you give, your 50-minute keynote every Sunday, and to create a new keynote speech, that's a big deal. It's a lot. Some of these people, they craft one message and speak that message for their entire year, or their entire lifetime, if you're a professional speaker. A pastor, you're creating that every Sunday. And one of the things that really became a nuisance to me was that, every Sunday I'm laying down my best work, and on the way out the door, it's inevitable. People are like, "Hey, good talk. That was a great message," right? And they give you a high five as they're off to their, favorite restaurant. That didn't sit well with me. It didn't sit well with me because I'm giving you life-changing information that you can use to implement to do something that's going to affect you, or that's going to affect people around you, and you're not going to do anything with it. And then I'd have like 2 or 3 people that would say, "Hey, can we dive into that a little bit further and really figure out what I need to do with my life to master that?" And I really found myself loving those conversations. So my thought is like, if I can just be a personal pastor where I can come alongside someone, help them recognize like a biblical precedent, and it changed their life and then someone else's life around them, that's what I want to do with my life. So what sets me apart is I use that to help you discover really what you're about and what you're after. And what's challenging? Mindsets are challenging. The things that are in our mind, the experiences that we've grown up with, those are the things that become our limiting factors. I wrote a book that's still kind of in publishing or in edit right now. But one of the lines I put in my book is that the things that we learn are taught to us through channels of other people's fear. And when people teach through their filters of fear, it translates those same fears to us. And so now we make decisions based on someone else's experience with fear, not that it may be our own, But fear
Right.
is like one of the largest limiting factors in our life. So how do we get past that? How do we get beyond the places where, where we want to go, but we're afraid of?
So how do you help them get through that? Like
Well,
when they haven't experienced what they are afraid of, but they've only heard, they're coming into that situation. So it's the unknown, like uncharted territory, but yet they have someone that they know that went through that.
yeah,
And, like you said, shares happens to be they had a negative experience with it,
sure.
so that's what all they have to go off of. So how do you help guide them that that person's experience might not be the same or may,
Exactly.
you
And
know?
I'll frame it like this, and then I'll kind of tell you my core message. But there's two forms of teaching that happen in our culture today: intentional and unintentional education, right?
Mhm.
Intentional education is where you go to a school system or you're implementing or onboarding to like an education or a course or something that you're going to choose to take. Those are, and that comprises about 10% of our life is intentional education. The other 90% of our learned, whatever we learn, happens in an unintentional form. It's in those
Mhm.
moments where you're just sitting around talking with your family or you're sitting across from a dinner table. Those are all teaching moments. And ironically and inevitably, it's in those moments that we learn the most. It's in those offhanded conversations that happen around the table about like, hey, how was your day? What did you experience? And it's in those raw, like unrestrained moments that we demonstrate our filters of fear or our filters of belief, right? And so what happens? Like, I was frustrated today because this unexpected thing happens. And like, with our kids listening, they're listening to our frustration and they're interpreting that as, oh, I should stay away from those situations in my life because dad just said that he was afraid of that, or he demonstrated an element of fear. And so we've just taught something to be afraid of. Right. Or you hear these offhanded comments. I remember this. We were watching the Super Bowl last year, and there's this guy that's there, somebody else in the room, somebody else's friend, and he's making all these comments about how expensive it is to advertise. Oh, wouldn't it be? It was such a waste of money to advertise in the Super Bowl. Do you know how much these Super Bowl commercials cost? He's talking about his limitation about money because to him that's a waste. To someone else, that's the best investment dollar he's ever spent, right? And so we're teaching someone else's perspective about money. What if you could control those elements and decide that, wow, I'm going to be intentional about what I teach my kids or the people that are around me or the experiences I have, and really propel into a positive direction together. Do you see elements like that in your own life?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, I mean, every day it's you have. I mean, I'm in real estate as well, so I have other agents that have different ways of doing things, and then I'll come to them and say, how did that marketing campaign work with such and such? And they'll just say, oh, it's a waste of money, this, that, blah, blah, blah. But then come to find out they didn't really evaluate it properly before they committed to it. They weren't going to put in the time for when those leads came through. So, yes.
It's totally there.
Yeah.
It's everywhere
Yeah.
we go.
It's everywhere,
It is for sure.
and then it's like anyone else, it could have probably turned them off and they would have been like, oh, thanks for sharing that, gonna stay away from that. But
Right.
you can't base it off somebody else's experience. You can take what happened to them and kind of teach, learn from that in the sense of, okay, well, they did this. So let me try. If I do this with it, I think it'll actually work.
100%. It really comes down to belief system. What is your belief system?
Yes.
And so that becomes the core of my message. And so the story I want to kind of tell you this morning is
Yes.
this. The book I wrote is called Breaking the I Can't Cycle. And what I discovered, I'm going to use a biblical precedent here. So I'm going to coach you and your people a little bit. But there's a verse in the Bible from Philippians 4 that says, I can do all things through Christ who gives me strength. So I can do this, right? And think about, and here's the onboard that I want to get. June 2nd, 2016, my wife and I, we walked into the maternity ward at the hospital in St. Petersburg, Florida. And walking past this maternity ward, we see this little girl. She is like gray as a ghost. This girl does not have good color. And I literally thought to myself, something's wrong with that girl, and I hope she's going to be okay. Now, we're there to adopt. We are there to pick up the baby girl that has just been born. Like, we went through this private adoption scenario, and most like pregnancy periods, like 9 months, maybe 9 months and a couple days if everything goes well. This one was 3.5 years for us to get to this spot where this baby girl was born. And we had started it with a question. My wife had some medical problems that was preventing additional pregnancy. We'd already had one son, but it couldn't happen again. And she's frustrated. My wife has this determined mentality. Her phrasing always is, don't tell me how you can't, tell me how you can. And that has just been such a motivator for me. I come from a very restrained mentality, and that was so refreshing for me to have that experience with her. She's challenging me. My whole life, she's been challenging me, right? And so she starts this question years before this, and she says, I wonder if it would be my heart's desire to adopt a baby through a private adoption scenario. And so we started pressing into it. Do you know how expensive it is to adopt a baby through a private adoption?
Yeah.
Man, we started getting presented with these cases, and they were anywhere from now this is 10, 12 years ago. And so the cases were coming at us at like $27,000 up to like $60,000 to adopt a kid. And we're just mind blown. Like you go into it and you're like, okay, we'll try. But and we started getting presented with these cases, and my small scarcity, poverty mentality is just crippling me. And I remember going to her about 6 months into this process, and I said, Crystal, we can't do this. And I declared a limitation over our life. I can't do this. And I watched a piece of my wife die. Literally in that moment, a part of her died because I literally took away her mamahood. And for the next 2 years, we kind of just floundered. Now, she is the most loving, respectful, kind woman you'll ever meet. And so she was patient, and she just waited. And 2 years later, we get an email from the adoption consultant that we had hired. And they said, hey, your contract with us is going to expire. Do you want to go through with this, or do you want to let it die? And those words just cut me to my heart. And she got this email, and she said, Kevin, we need to pray about this, and we need to figure out what we're going to do. And so we prayed for 15 seconds and decided that we were in. Mind you, all of my restrained mentality was still there. Nothing had changed. We still didn't have any money, but I decided that we can do this. We can go into this one more step. And so we started lining up all the stuff. We were presented to, a couple different cases, and this mama chose us. She chose our family to be the parents of her child that she was going to place into the adoption system. And we're not going to go into we don't have the time to go into all the details of how this all lines up and how it works and what happens with all that money and all that. It's irrelevant at this point. But the day finally came. They told us, hey, your baby girl is going to be born in the next 2 weeks. Get ready. You have 24 hours from that phone call comes to be at the hospital, wherever this is at, right? And so we're waiting for this phone call, waiting. And finally the phone call came. 7:00 on a Tuesday morning, June 2nd. I get the phone call, and I let it go to voicemail. I was standing in line at Starbucks to get my morning coffee, and the phone call rang, and I just sent it to voicemail, not even thinking, right? And so I checked the voicemail, and I was shocked. Here it is. This is it. She's like, get on a plane. Your baby girl has been born. And
wow.
So it was just majestic, right? So I race home, and I tell Crystal, it's go time. Today's the day. And so at that time, we had 4 kids in our home, a couple foster care kids and our own son, and they got to go somewhere. We got suitcases packed by the door, and it was just execute, right? So I sit down and I'm booking plane tickets and booking a car, and she's getting the last minute stuff ready. Within 4 hours, we're racing through the airport at Dulles National Airport in DC, and we get through security, and she's pushing this pink and black stroller. And somebody's like, hey, you're missing, so you forgot something. And I will never forget, my wife yells out, we're going to get our baby girl. She's just
Oh,
at the top of her voice. We're the last people on the plane, and we didn't get to sit together and to get through this emotional experience where we're just 2.5 hours on this plane to get to this place, and finally we make it, and we walk through that hospital, that maternity ward, to find out that that little gray baby girl is ours. And
oh
she looks that
gosh.
way because she was born testing positive with cocaine.
Oh my gosh.
And she's going to spend the first week of her life in the neonatal intensive care unit to be able to get past the implications of, positive for cocaine. That was 8 years ago.
How's she
Today,
doing now?
I tell her all the time, I joke with her. I tell her, we are an open book. All of our kids, the 4 kids that we've adopted, they all know that they are adopted. And we're just an open book. And I told her, I said, you were a druggie when you were a baby. And I told her that her wit is her superpower, and it came from her cocaine addiction when she was born. And it's humorous now, but she is the smartest little wit that you could ever meet. And she is super healthy, and she is the light of our life. But I want you to understand this. How many times in our lives do we declare impossibility by those words? I can't.
Yeah, we limit ourselves.
It's everywhere. Think about this. Like, we say, I can't do that. I can't handle that. I can't imagine that. I can't face that. I can't eat that. I can't run that far. I can't.
Right.
I can't. My favorite one is, I can't afford that. And without knowing it, what we do when we use the phrase I can't is, we're not talking about our current reality. We're actually declaring over our future that it's permanently impossible. I mean, is that the reality that you want to experience and face, is just a future of impossibility?
Absolutely not.
No one thinks that.
Yeah. And
But
that's why I can't goes hand in hand with fear.
Yes.
It's subconsciously just second guessing yourself by saying, no, I can't do this, or, because you're afraid of if you fail,
That's right.
but what if you succeed? So what a great, great, great story.
So here's the implications, right? My friend John Maxwell, I'm part of the John Maxwell team, and my friend John Maxwell says that success is found on the other side of yes. Oh, that blew my mind. First time I ever heard that, revolutionized my thinking. Success is found on the other side of yes. And yet most of our words are framed around no, I can't, or no, I won't, or I don't want that, or whatever the frame may be. But here's the thing. Here's the message I would send to your people, your audience today. Our life has changed because we finally got to a spot where we said, I think we can do this. It's going to be hard. It's going to be overwhelming. Not everything's going to be resolved in the moment. In fact, we had a baby payment for a long time, but I can do this.
Yeah.
And my life is better because I added this little girl to it. Her life is better because we added her to it. And so here's the thing. Here's the gauge that I want you to analyze yourself. Whose life doesn't change because you said I can't? Oh, just let that sink in for a minute.
Yeah. Whose life doesn't change that says I can't?
Because you said you can't.
Yeah, which affects.
When we finally got to a spot where we said, I think we can do this, my life changed, her life changed. There were so many people that
I mean,
benefited.
The rest of your kids, their lives changed. They
my God.
Another sibling. I mean,
that's what it is. So there is an amazing possibility that happens when you open your mind up to possibility. I can do this.
Yep, for sure. So what's one of the biggest challenges you faced leaving being a pastor and becoming a personal pastor?
Yeah. You know what? Still mindset. Because everything is an uphill battle. Another business building line, and I'm sure that you've dealt with this in your own business and with other clients that you've worked with or people on your podcast. But the building of business is harder than you ever thought it would be. It costs more than you thought it was going to cost, and it takes longer
Absolutely.
than you think it's going to take.
Absolutely. Good gosh.
And honestly, if it wasn't for that, wouldn't everyone just kind of venture off into their own business world?
Yes. And that's why there's a lot of them that don't do that.
Or they start and they think it's going to be easy, and then it's not, and they, quote unquote, fail. Failure only happens when you quit, when you give up. That's it.
Yep.
That
Absolutely.
would be the thing that has been a difficulty for me, is just staying engaged in the game, kind of reminding myself every single day, you know what, I can do this. I can do this too, even though it's scary, even though there's moments that it's really quiet, the phone doesn't ring, there are no leads, there isn't anything else, but it's going back to those initial practices and going through the motions of, all right, how did I get my last client? How did I find this? What do I need to do next? You just repeat the same process, right?
Right.
You go meet some new people. You do whatever it takes. You keep at it over and over and over and over again.
And keep finding new ways to bring in new leads.
Exactly. You just don't
So
quit.
yeah. So has there been a book or podcast or someone that's really changed your outlook or approach?
Wow, that's a good question. So honestly, John Maxwell, I can't speak highly enough. So John Maxwell is probably the leading leadership development entity in the world today. He is by far one of the largest voices in the sector of leadership development. And to get framed around healthy mindsets it's crucial. Like, honestly, if you're not choosing somehow to grow daily, ultimately you're shrinking somewhere. You're constraining your life if you're not choosing to advance. And so John would have that message, man. The books that he talks about or writes, and the places that he speaks, it just infiltrates into your mind, and it helps change your outlook, changes who you are.
That's great. I'll have to look him up.
Yeah, for sure.
So what's can you share with us like a personal habit or routine that's significantly contributed to your personal success?
Yes, ma'am. By far the best habit that I've integrated into my flow is a daily startup process. What the higher you go in expectation of yourself, it requires a new startup process of your day. So I frame it like this. In fact, I told a guy this morning as I was kind of coaching him. You don't get to, when you become a high performance person, you don't get to just roll out of bed and go at it. You have a sequence that you start up your process, you start up your day with, and you're framing your mind and you're putting into your mind exactly what needs to be there so that you can be successful. Success doesn't come by accident. It comes by intention. You decided that. And so you've got to really start framing your outlook based on, where do I want to be and where do I want to end up? We all have these ideas of goals that we want to get to. Everyone I've ever met has some kind of a goal they want to hit, whether they are specific about it or not. And we have to kind of check pulse on where we are with that every day. And that would be a startup process. How did you start today? What did you put in your mind today? When people talk about the fact that they had a bad day, it's really just the fact that they didn't decide to be intentional about what they were going to expect and experience with their day. Does that make sense?
That's true. Yeah, that makes absolute sense. I mean, if you wake up and start your day off, negatively, then that's all you're going to attract the entire day.
Exactly.
More or less, and then you become a product of your surroundings.
Yes.
And if you don't have that mindset where you're telling yourself, I'm going to do this today, this is going to be the best day. You know what? I'm going to go try this. Okay, that didn't work out. Let's give this a try.
Yep.
And I think, and you're right, the way you start your day and that mindset dictates everything.
Exactly.
So, let me ask you another question here. So, it sounds like things are going really well for you and being able to help out and, other people with coaching and their mindset, more or less,
Yeah.
and I like that I like how you said that you're like you're a personal pastor, which is awesome. I mean, I love my priest. So I'm texting him all the time. He's my spiritual advisor. I'm like, okay, blah,
Perfect.
blah, blah. So it's awesome. So as you're looking towards the future, how are you creating passive income, or have you invested in the past?
Yeah. Yeah, great question. In fact, that's one of my things now, because I am still I have a lot of connections to like the ministry world. So I'm working with pastors pretty frequently, and they are really wrestling through some of those money problems. This world is getting very expensive,
Yes, it
and
is.
churches can't keep up with what it costs to be able to support a pastor's family. So we started answering this question a long time ago. I bought my first rental property in 2019, and man, it changed my life to be able to have a source of income that was outside of what I was receiving from my job or, my pastorate at that point. Foster care also kind of changed our lives. We did not get into foster care. No one gets into foster care for money, but I didn't expect it to help us the level that it did. Like, we get to help these kids, but it was helping us financially as well. And we still get to reap some benefit from that. So I'm really thankful for that. But we've really ventured into the idea of, in fact, I just bought another rental property like 3 months ago.
Oh, that's
Because,
great.
oh my gosh, it's incredible. There are deals to be found everywhere, and you can get into them for a lot less money than you think you need. In fact, my first rental property I literally got for free. I used rich dad, poor dad's, other people's money mentality, and I walked away with a free house out of the deal.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Tell me
Wow.
who wouldn't do that?
How did that happen?
Seriously. I mean, I did a credit hack type scenario. I took out a personal loan and bought this house with cash. I had to spend 6 months renovating it, but after that 6 months, I refinanced it into a mortgage. They paid off every penny that I had taken out to be able to purchase it and refine and to renovate it. I get a free house and a renter out of the deal, and who's
Great tax advantages as well.
huge.
Especially with having to feed all those babies you have there.
For sure.
That's fantastic. Well, it sounds like things are going pretty well for you. So, as we're wrapping up this meeting, or interview, I should say, so what exciting plans or initiatives do you have planned over the next 6 to 12 months?
So I just got to meet with a company here in my area who wants to provide coaching services to his clientele. And so I am excited to be able to work alongside of another group of people wrestling through those same implications. When someone hires me to coach with them, they're asking two questions that they don't realize they're asking, and it becomes my opportunity to kind of draw that out of them. They're asking how do I get more time? Everyone wants to free up time. How do I get more time to be able to do what I love? And the other question they're asking is, how do I create more significant impact in my world or in the world around me? And I absolutely love to be able to help people realize, like, what is that dream and how do you advance on that dream? Whatever the implications are. I know there's going to be barriers. Everyone's got to climb a Mount Everest at some point in their life. Whether they do it physically or whether they do it mentally, there's a mountain to climb. So let's get after it, because honestly, you're only losing time.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, and if you can simplify it for them in little phases of
Right.
getting there, because a lot of people tend to take the whole thing in.
Right.
And all the steps and everything's going to do it. What if, and then they just kind of overwhelm themselves,
Yeah, they do.
and spook themselves. And then they're like, never mind. I'm good where I'm
Yep.
at.
And honestly, that's the reason why that idea of the whole thing or all the options on the table, that puts people in that position of overwhelm. And what happens when people get overwhelmed? They literally choose nothing.
Yeah.
And
And they just, they revert back to
they
where they were.
revert back to,
And
yeah.
they're like,
And
this
they,
isn't so bad.
I was talking to someone just recently who was talking to me about how they didn't get paid enough. And I hear that all the time. I don't get paid enough money. Well, of course you don't. But do we also understand that the level at which we are compensated is what we feel like we deserve, we are worth? Like you agreed to receive that as compensation. You decided to stop going to look for something else. So
You settled.
that's it.
Yeah. You settled for that. And then a lot of times, some people that settle, and agree to that, like, okay, I'm happy with this, gonna do it. But then as they're growing in learning more with their position, then all of a sudden they want more, but they don't know how to ask for it,
Right.
in the right mindset. Instead, they tend to get a little bit upset.
Right.
They get emotional over it.
Yeah.
So then they're not articulating, hey, you know what? I've been doing this for this long. I've also have added this, and this onto what I signed up for, and having that conversation about, I'd like to move up, I'd like to have a pay
Yeah.
increase, but instead they get upset and then they kind of just don't move any which way, you know?
You're exactly right. And really, I think the way that I've come to frame that is that they have stopped believing in the power of their own potential.
I like
And
that.
man, if they could revive that again and realize that, you know what, I have more to offer. I have, and if the place that you're in doesn't want what you have to offer, go find someplace else.
Right.
Someone
Right.
would love to have what you have to offer.
Yeah. There's always someone and something out there, you know, that's willing to take you on and allow you to flourish with your
Oh
thoughts,
yeah,
give you all the tools that you want so you can go be creative, you know?
absolutely. 100%.
So, well, this was awesome. I really, really enjoyed chatting with you.
Oh, thank you.
It was a lot of fun. So as we're wrapping this up, why don't, if anybody wanted to get in touch with you to chat with you, to be a part of what you're doing, how do they get a hold of you?
So I have a website. It's kevinelworth.live. Right there, you can, right at the top of the page, you can book a call. I would love to set up a call with you and figure out where are you at? What are you up against? What is your desire? One of my favorite Bible verses, Psalm 37:4, says, "Delight yourself in the Lord, and He will give you your desire." So what do you want? Let's
Right.
talk
Just
about what
ask.
it is that you want, and let's
Yeah.
go after it.
Yeah. It's literally ask and you shall receive.
That's
Don't
it.
ask, don't receive.
That's it. Simple as that.
It's that simple. Well, this was a lot of fun. Well, I wish you and your kids and your family the best, and thank you so much for coming on. So
Thank
you
you.
heard it, guys. If you want to get a hold of Kevin, he gave you his website, which is kevinelworth.live.
That's
So
it.
reach out to him and get on track. Thank you.
Thanks for listening to Driven, the Unscripted Success Podcast. Want to share your story? Apply to be a guest at drivensuccesspodcast.com/guest.